Like, Canadians who aren't vaccinated now cannot leave the country.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? Why is that? And look, I got vaccinated and people took me to task for that. And I thought, all right, I'll get the damn vaccine. Here's the deal, guys. I'll get the vaccine. You fucking leave me alone. And did that work? No. So stupid me. That's how I feel about it. It's like, well, now I have to get tested for COVID when I come back into Canada. I have to get tested before I leave Canada. Now, that might be the latter issue. That's an issue with the Americans. And so that's outside of the Canadian purview. But the restrictions to get back into Canada are even more stringent. It's like, well, why to get the vaccine then if you're not going to leave me alone? And I don't think the evidence that unvaccinated or that vaccinated people are less contagious, let's say, I don't think it's very compelling.
Yeah.
So why are the unvaccinated all of a sudden a danger? And I certainly don't understand the push to get children vaccinated. I think that's absolutely reprehensible. And in relationship to the COVID restrictions, I talked to a senior advisor to one of the provincial governments a couple of weeks ago. He told me flat out that the COVID policy here is driven by nothing but opinion polls related to the popularity of the government. No science, no end game in sight, no real plan. And so what that means is that the part of the population that's most afraid of COVID, I know it's 50% of Democrats believe that you have a 50% shot at getting hospitalized if you catch COVID, and 25% of Republicans. And so I suspect it's similar in Canada. And so policy is being driven by people who are more afraid than they should be. And it was a very disheartening conversation because I trust this guy and he knows what he's talking about. And so, I wouldn't say I'm cynical about governments exactly, because cynicism it's a cheap shortcut to approximating wisdom, let's say. And you have to be judicious in your criticisms. But I still found that extremely disheartening. I think the thing that surprised me the most probably was how rapidly we stampeded to imitate a totalitarian state in the immediate aftermath of the release of COVID. Now, if you think it through a little bit, no one really knew how serious the virus was going to be. And so it was an unknown threat. And so you can imagine a herd of animals, or a school of fish for that matter, because this kind of phenomena is universal throughout the animal kingdom. The cost of overreacting to a threat is generally minimal compared to underreacting to a real threat, right? Overreacting to a hypothetical threat is cheap compared to underreacting to an actual threat. Because if you underreact, you can die. Whereas if you overreact, you generally just get tired for a minute. So a herd will stampede because the most neurotic member of the herd jumps first, and then they'll instantly follow them. And that's kind of what we did in the early stages of the pandemic. The Chinese acted first. Now, unfortunately, they are a totalitarian state, and we all followed. And that's excusable in some sense because we didn't know what sort of threat we were facing. But then the breakdown, it's really appalling in Canada, the breakdown of our rights, let's say, for mobility, for freedom of speech, etc. It's particularly grating to me in the Canadian context because way back in the 80s, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, our current Prime Minister's father, who was quite an intellectual, he was very enamored of French civil law, and he grafted a Bill of Rights on top of the Canadian federal common law structure, essentially. And I didn't like that at all. I thought that was a bastardization of a great English common law tradition. I'm not a fan of bills of rights because they're predicated on the idea that you have a finite set of rights and that the social contract awards them to you or the government. And I think that's backwards. It's like, you have all the rights there are, except those that are expressly forbidden by detailed legislation that mostly was generated from the bottom up. That's the English common law tradition. Anyways, everybody celebrated the Bill of Rights. Aren't you protected? Oh my God, all our rights are protected now forever. It was Pierre Trudeau's major accomplishment, hypothetically. Now we have his son, and it's like, yeah, what's it good for? My father isn't vaccinated. He decided not to, partly because they were telling him he had to. And he has his other reasons. I have family members who aren't vaccinated for health reasons, who also had COVID twice and didn't really feel they needed to be vaccinated again. In any case, it's extraordinarily annoying to see this happening. And to then find out that there's nothing behind it except like the most instrumental and cowardly random polling is extremely disheartening and also maddening and also angering. I don't understand that at all. Like, and psychologically, so what's going on here? It's like, well, I think the underlying phenomenon is something like, well, as long as it's for health and safety, it's always good. And, you know, not to get conspiratorial here, but the same damn thing is going to happen with the climate change push.
Absolutely.
They're already it's already being reconfigured as, well, it's the biggest public health issue of our time. It's like, no, I don't think so. I think overreaching bureaucrats are the biggest health, what would you say, the biggest challenge to our health of our time.